Hello everyone, this is going to be hopefully a quick short video on how you calculate value in marginal product and then how do you find marginal factor cost. This is dealing with round 2, the majority of what needs to be done with round 2 of the project. I've received a couple of emails, a couple of questions regarding it, so I'll make a quick video and hopefully this will help everyone out. So, I've got some notes down here. First thing we want to do is we want to talk about what is the value of marginal product. Well, a way to explain value of marginal product is it is the value in marginal product is the additional value or the additional revenue received from using one more unit of input. Basically saying, for example, in the project, if we use one more pound of feed, how much is that going to return us in revenue? How much is one more pound of feed going to translate into how much more pounds of gain, and what is the total revenue off those pounds of gain is kind of what it means, and hopefully you'll be able to see that after this little video. Then we have the marginal factor cost. So marginal factor cost is the cost associated with using one more unit of input. So it's basically asking us how much is it costing us to use that one additional pound of feed. So all this deals with the input side. So unlike the output side where you're dealing with like say marginal revenue or marginal cost, where it's saying what is the cost associated with one more unit of output, this is dealing with the marginal factor cost on the input side, saying what is it costing us to use one more unit of input. So in order to do this, to find the value of marginal product, it is the marginal product times the price of the output. To find the marginal factor cost, it is simply the price of the input. So as we work through here, first off we need to find the marginal product. You should have already done this in round 1, and if you didn't, we'll go ahead and go through it again on how to do it. And I believe there's a video on calculating marginal product, but we'll go ahead and go through it again. So to calculate marginal product is the change in output divided by the change in input. So I'll go ahead and do that formula real quick. So we have the change in output, so it's a change in total product. So it'd be this 3 minus 1 divided by the change in input, which is going to be this 2 minus 1. And then we can actually drag that down. So we found that as we increase our input from 1 to 2 units, as we increase our input by 1 unit, we are going to get 2 units of output out. So we can drag that down, and now we have this marginal product curve. So the value of marginal product is simply the price of the output times the marginal product. So over here under this important information block, I have $1 per unit of output. So maybe I can rewrite this and say instead of $1 per unit, we're going to just say price of output, or price of the output. So in your project, I say it's a single price. Well, if you remember back, sorry about that, you had to calculate the revenue, the total revenue for your round 1, and that total revenue, you had to come up with a single price. That single price was that average, right? Or you could have done something else, but a lot of people chose the average. So that single price is that price of the output. That does not change. That is going to be the same thing right here. And then we also have the price of the input. So we have this price of that output. That is that number that you had to calculate. Remember, you had to find that one single price. Then you have the price of the input. So the input in your example is going to be that fertilizer. How much does it cost you per pound of fertilizer? That's going to be that price of the input. So if we find our value in marginal product, it is equal to the marginal product times this price of this output. So it's going to be this marginal product times the price of the output. So we're going to go ahead and lock the price of the output in. And I did that by just putting dollar signs and pressing F4 and putting dollar signs right there. That's what you call locking it in. Then you can drag that down. So what is this column meaning? What is it saying? It's saying that as we increase our input from 1 to 2 units, as we use one more unit of input, we are going to receive $10 in revenue out of it. As we increase from 2 to 3 units, or we increase by 1 unit of input here, we get $15 back in revenue. As we increase from 3 to 4 right here, we will get $12 in revenue back. So basically what it's saying is, as you increase by 1 unit of input, this is the amount of revenue you're going to get back. So we said that the marginal factor cost, this marginal factor cost is going to be equal to the price of the input, because that is what it is costing us to use one more unit of input. As we increase from 1 to 2 units of input, we're adding one more unit of input, and it's going to cost us $6 more. So this marginal factor cost is simply equal to the price of the input. So you can go ahead and lock that one in too. And you can drag it down. Or if you are unfamiliar with locking stuff in, you could simply just type in this first cell, instead of saying equals, you can just type in the number 6. And then you can drag it down as well. But we're going to go ahead and do it the other way, with locking it in. So what you're doing here is you're trying to find where the value of marginal product equals marginal factor cost. That is profit maximization from the input standpoint. It's very similar to trying to find where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. It's going to be the exact same principle, only you're dealing with, whenever you're dealing with value of marginal product and marginal factor cost, you're looking at it from the input side. So you try to find where these two equal, and both of these equal at this $6. They're going to equal the price of the input. So if you look right here, you can trace this back and you say, alright, profit maximization output is 13.2, profit maximization input is 7. The reason that it's where these two equal, where the value of marginal product equals the marginal factor cost, the reason that it's at that point rather than say up here or down here is because this is the revenue that you're receiving off of each additional unit of input, and this is a cost. So if we take the difference right here, so this revenue off of this unit minus the cost, we see that at this price, at 3 units of input, when they use that third unit of input, they're making $9 in profit. That's that revenue minus that cost off of just that third unit. Well, if they increase to that fourth unit, they can make an additional $6 in profit. So if they just produce at this $3, at this 3 units of input, they're giving up this additional $6 of input and whatever else comes below it. So this is additional $6 of profit. You don't want to give up profit. So we can actually take this down, and at this level, let's say they produce at 5 units of input. They're giving up $2 in profit by not producing there. So what happens is, by not producing where MC or MFC equals MVP, or marginal value product equals marginal factor cost, by not producing there, you're giving up some sort of profit. And if you produce at a level where marginal value of marginal product is less than marginal factor cost, you're actually giving up profit. You're actually not making as much. Your costs now exceed your revenues. So as a result, by process of elimination, you always want to produce at this level where marginal factor cost equals value of marginal product. Now, something else. If we look at our marginal product curve, if you remember, there's 3 different stages of the marginal product curve. So let me see if I can make a quick graph real quick. We're going to say insert a chart. We're going to do chart types, use column row as headers. We're going to go right here, sorry. We're going to go ahead and insert that. So here we have our total product curve and then our marginal product curve. Well, there's 3 specific stages along this marginal product curve. The first one is up until the point where it peaks. Up until this peaking point, that is going to be, this area over here is going to be what's called increasing marginal returns. If you remember, you do not produce at increasing marginal returns because you're giving up efficiency. You're never going to produce over here where the marginal product, it becomes negative, because out here that's at negative marginal returns. So you're never going to produce at the point where marginal product becomes negative, or you're never going to produce on the leftward side of this original peak. So as a result, the only place that you're actually going to produce is right here along this curve. So whenever you're making this value of marginal product curve, you actually don't make this whole curve. What you'll do is you'll actually just make this area in the middle. It's called this decreasing marginal returns. This rational range of production is another term for it. So you're only going to produce from the peak to where it becomes negative again. So I'm going to go ahead and delete, or actually I'm going to leave this graph. I'm going to kind of leave it over here to the side. And I'm going to take these numbers, or this one right here, and I'm going to move it down here to where it's still available to be seen. And I'm going to redo something. And I'm going to say, I'm going to have the same labels, but now I'm going to only include the area between that peak, between the peak and where it becomes negative, so that rational range of production. So that occurs at 2 units of input. Let's see, actually it occurs at 3 units of input, because here's the peak right there. So I'm going to take this, drag it across, and I'm going to drag this down, and all I'm doing is cell referencing. Well, if you look at the marginal product, here's where it becomes negative. So we actually don't want to include that, because that's not within our rational range of production. What we want to do is we want to make a graph of these two columns within this range, because that is our rational range of production, and we found that out by looking at the marginal product. So in order to make my graph nice and pretty, I'm going to go ahead and include this input column over here as well. The reason I'm doing that is because it just makes the graph work out easier. So I want to highlight these. I want to go to Insert. I want to go ahead and say Insert a Chart. Chart Types. I want to use column D as labels. We'll click that one. And then we'll go ahead and say Insert. Then of course you can rename everything. You're going to want to go ahead and rename. You're going to probably want to rename this chart title. You're going to want to give your horizontal and vertical axis. You're going to make sure that those are labeled. But this is going to be similar to what your value and marginal product and marginal factor cost curves look like. And if you look right here, you can find where those two intersect. Where those two intersect is going to give you your profit maximization input. So if you see, those two intersect right at 7 units of input, which is exactly what we found over here. Right here at 7 units of input, that is our profit maximization. That's our profit maximization units of input. And if you can see, this particular chart right here will look almost identical, or should look identical to what this curve looks like in between the point where it peaks and where it becomes negative at. And all this curve is, this value marginal product curve, it is the exact same thing as this curve right here in between, within the rational range of production, only rather than it associated with the actual number of inputs, it's actually dealing with the revenue, instead of looking at the actual number of outputs, it's looking at the revenue received off of those outputs. I hope this video kind of helps. It helps clarify some of the things on the value marginal product and marginal factor cost. I believe it should put you on the right path. Thank you very much for watching.